Hello, and welcome to this episode of The Diary of a Lawyer. And today I'm just going to cover something slightly different from the last two topics of financial regulation, but again within the same sort of finance area. Now, a former Mozambique minister pleaded guilty in the US federal court over a $2 billion scandal. According to the Associated Press, the Mozambique former finance minister pleaded not guilty in a U.S. federal court in New York last week in relation to a $2 billion corruption and money laundering scandal that prosecutors say defrauded American investors and threatened to further destabilize the economy of one of the world's poorest countries. Manuel Chang served as finance minister from 2005 to 2015 for Mozambique, a country that has over 31 million on the southern coast of Africa and the Indian Ocean. He was ordered to be detained until October, where his lawyers argue for dismissal of the case. Mr. Chang is accused of receiving bribes of up to $18 million during a scheme that secured loans for Mozambique state-owned companies from foreign banks and financiers for maritime projects. The money is alleged to have been looted through kickbacks and other corrupt dealings, according to U.S. prosecutors. Now, until his extradition to the United States on Wednesday, Chang had been held in South Africa after being arrested in Johannesburg in 2018 on a U.S. warrant. His lawyer said he is relieved to be there after the arraignment in U.S. District Court in Brooklyn. He had fought his extradition to the U.S. and the Mozambican government's own attempts to have Chang face trial in Mozambique had been dismissed by several South African courts. Now, some groups opposed his return to his own country because of concerns that he would likely be treated leniently. And in a letter a month ago to the U.S. District Judge Nicholas Garofus, one of Chang's attorneys sought to have the case dismissed, asserting that Chang's right to a speedy trial had been violated. Ford has called the charges meritless and asserted that Chang would be acquitted like any other key figure in the alleged scheme, who was acquitted by a U.S. jury in 2019. However, the judge raised the point in court that the court was persuaded by this prosecution's suggestion that another jury might see things differently. Now, in 2019, a federal jury court acquitted the co-defendant Jean Bostani, a Lebanese national who worked for a Middle Eastern shipbuilding company, who was accused by American authorities of fraud related to $200 million in bribes and kickbacks as part of the broader scheme. Now, much of the hearing was focused on whether Chang should be released on bail, and the judge, citing the amount of money involved and the gravity of the charges, agreed with prosecutors that he could be a flight risk. During the hearing, the lawyer for the U.S. government provided a preview of the evidence that could be introduced during a trial, including emails, spreadsheets, bank records, and other financial documents. Now, the scandal centers on loans totaling around $2 billion that were apparently supposed to go toward purchasing fishing vessels and naval patrol boats to bolster Mozambique's fishing industry. But according to prosecutors, the investment never happened. The alleged scandal caused a financial crisis in Mozambique when the IMF, that's the International Monetary Fund, withdrew its support for the country after the so-called quote-unquote hidden debts were revealed in 2016. Now, in 2021, the Swiss bank Credit Suisse agreed to pay at least 475 million US dollars to British and American authorities to settle bribery and kickback allegations stemming from their involvement with the corrupt loans. I think at this point we need to pause and say that since then, events have speeded very fast in relation to Credit Suisse in association with the other banks and investments that have since seen serious dent in its operations and reputation and regulation, not just in Switzerland, but all over the world. But that's another matter. But this is just one example of such similar issues with Credit Suisse. Now, at least 10 people have already been convicted and sentenced to prison by a Mozambican court of its scandal, including the son of a former Mozambican president, and he was sentenced to 12 years in prison for receiving up to $33 million from the deal. And so that's it in a nutshell. A former African politician who was extradited to the US for alleged embezzlement of significant amounts of money. I think people would be thinking, well, why the US jurisdiction and why New York? It's probably, and I'm just speculating here, it's the long-arm jurisdiction if there is any nexus between the state of New York and the alleged allegations. And that would appear was the source of the jurisdiction in this case. And so there we shall leave it on this episode of The Diary of a Lawyer. We shall speak again, and thanks for listening. Thank you. Bye.